Hello, and welcome to the Pit Pony podcast with myself, Sharon Cawley,
and me, Sarah Dunwood,
in which we talk to teachers from all walks of life who exited the classroom from what they thought was a job for life and thrived on the other side of teaching. Coming up in this episode,
people for so many years felt completely separated, completely alone in all of this. People would be told, "Yeah, you're struggling. Everybody else seems to be getting on okay." And of course, what we haven't mentioned yet, of course, is NDAs. All the people that tend to leave after getting a support plan. There's a couple of ways people leave. Lots just resign, and lots leave with a settlement. And those that leave with a settlement have to sign an NDA. So, straight away, all those people are separated. Straight away, they feel like they're the only one. They cannot talk about it outside of the walls of their own house.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new, fresh episode of the Pit Pony podcast. And for those of you on YouTube, you will see our faces, because that's what we're going to do from now on. We've come from behind the screen, so no more Sunday afternoon Sarah in our pajamas. This is it. Full hairdos happening. We're starting with a really great episode, to be perfectly honest, one that sits slightly outside of the norm of our Pit Ponies, life after teaching, exit the classroom and thrive stories, because we've got a great guest with us today, Nick Smart, who deserves an episode, in my opinion, all of his own, to talk about what he is doing at this moment in time. To give you a framing structure where Nick's concerned, primary school teacher. Now, he was traditionally trained as a middle school English teacher, but has always taught primary. A late entrant into the profession, so not your typical Pit Pony. Started at 42 and is currently 58, because I always like to work out how old people are when I look at them on screen, don't you, Sarah? And I can look quite now. He's 58, okay? He's 58 and is currently exiting the classroom. Full stop. No more comments are going to be made about the exiting of him from the classroom. So, Nick, welcome and thank you.
Hiya, thanks. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for the introduction.
There's no problem at all. So, Nick, let's start. Before we go into the whole story that you're going to tell us of what you've been up to, which is staggeringly impressive, start by that night you messaged me, you slid into my DMs on Facebook.
Well, what happened was this. For me, I've been teaching for 16 years now, and for most of that time, I've been aware that there's been a big problem within the profession, in that some people leave and have a leaving party, and some people leave and just quietly disappear, and you just never see them again. And no one really contacts those people, and people might be warned that it might not be professional to contact those people who've suddenly disappeared and gone quiet. And, these people were just literally disappearing from the profession. It became clear to me that something was very wrong. And of course, what we now know is that what's happening is people are given support plans, and these support plans don't provide any support whatsoever, generally. They just provide pressure and extra work to do, and most of these people just leave quietly. So I came to contact you, Sharon, because what I decided to do, I just got fed up with this, basically. And I decided to write to my MP, and not just write to him, but to urge him to write to the Education Secretary to raise this as a serious issue. Now, I've been a member of Life After Teaching for, I don't know, maybe 4 years or something. I think you've been going about 5 years. Is that right? So I think, maybe you've been going about a year when I joined up. And I've been pretty quiet, and sometimes I'd comment anonymously. But I became aware that Sarah had written in the past to the Education Secretary as well. So tried to get in touch with Sarah, couldn't directly do so, but was able to get in touch with you, Sharon. The reason I wanted to get in touch with Sarah is because I knew that she'd written to the Education Secretary herself So I thought, well, I'll tell my MP, Dan Aldridge is my MP. I thought I'll tell him, what the past is and what's gone on and what kind of communication Bridget Phillipson has had about this in the past. So I did. So we got in touch, and that's where the story began.
Cheers, Nick. And you're absolutely right. Sarah has been banging this drum for many, many years. Let's just take a little step back. Let's take a step back and imagine we are talking to the non-teaching listener, the husband or the wife of somebody who has not been in education, and goes, why are they kicking up a fuss about a support plan? I'm an accountant. I wish my boss had come in and offered me support for what I'm doing. Okay, what do we mean by this support plan? Because you have come up with the most beautiful, captured expression of what is happening. The reason these people are ghosted out of the profession, the reason they go and we've not signed their leaving card, is because they've been silenced by support. So let's dig into that for a moment. How has support in the world of education and support plan become an expression that people have now started to dread and signals the death knell on somebody's career? I'd be interested in both of your opinions on that.
Right. Let's start from a basis of where people don't understand, because the word support, in its truest sense, should be exactly that, which is something's not right, or somebody wants to develop themselves further, and a variety of mechanisms are put in around them in consultation, in agreement, to help that person if they're struggling, or help that person to move on and become even better. That's kind of the CPD framework of it. Then sat within the human resources, employment legislation, and we've talked about this, Sharon, on a previous podcast. I think it would be ridiculous for anybody to think that in any profession there aren't going to be people who either aren't fit for the job, their capability, or that there aren't going to be times where somebody needs to be disciplined. So there are legal routes for that. There are accepted HR processes for that. So what we're talking about is in the world of not fit to do the job, capability. So a good capability process, which I don't know whether that's a misnomer or a paradox, but a good capability process that's actually designed to support somebody properly in order to then move them to a point where they are able to do their job effectively and then move on with their career, should have stages in it. And one of those stages very early on is this kind of idea of informal support, in that it might be documented, but it's not part of an official capability process. Because once you're into an official capability process, then there are two roads on that, which is you walk the line, all the right support is actually put in place to allow you to be successful, you come off that capability, you carry on with your life. Or all the support's put in place, you don't achieve it, and at the end of it, the employer has a legal right, because they've followed the process, to dismiss you because you are not able to do your job. That's what should happen. What's happened over time is that informal support in education now appears to have been turned into informal support plans. And very much, to my mind, and by the observable evidence of what's happened in our group over the last 5 years, those informal support plans are not being put in place a lot of the time with the genuine intent of providing meaningful support for people to help them to improve. They are being used as a tool that removes psychological safety for those people, because the very term informal support plan now has become synonymous with I'm in trouble here. And that's not what should happen. If somebody's saying to you, we need some support, let's put something in. Yes, I'm going to write it down, but you're not in trouble. I want to help. That's what it should be. I want to help. We want to help. But it appears not to be that. It appears to be the precursor to, or the lever that is used to generate that visceral response in somebody where they go, oh, my number's up here. And I either have to suck this up or I have to walk away before I get tied up in a process that is not going to help me.
And in my experience, and I think this is why this is the case, let's look at it in real terms. A school comes to you and says, Sharon, look, your results have plummeted for the last 2 years. It is clear that your classroom management is really struggling. SLT at your door every single lesson. Your classroom, we've had complaints from... We have got some real evidence here that says we've got a problem and you need our support. Okay, fair enough. In my experience, what happens is I'm speaking to group members who go, I've just gone through a great Ofsted. My results were the best I've ever had. I don't have an ounce of issue with the kids. My marking's up to date. But I've got to agree that I need support with no evidence whatsoever that I've done out wrong.
Out of the blue, and suddenly
on your 45th birthday.
Yeah.
That phrase "out of the blue," it just comes up so often, doesn't it? As you just said, Sarah, literally, it comes from nowhere. And as you say, Sharon, it kind of, once you hear that phrase, informal support plan, you know.
You're in those crosshairs and with no evidence. And at that point, I find that the person who's faced with that crumbles. Some of them do. And they suddenly default into this pit of fear because they've seen it happen. It's past a 9 muller, isn't it? First they came for. And actually, at that point, they don't fight necessarily. Give me the evidence. Show me this. They fold because the amount of people who've been put on support plans with no evidence whatsoever is staggering.
Or spurious evidence. Because to go to your scenario, let's imagine that it is you. Sharon, your results the last 2 years have been, they've not been great. And SLT are always, you're always calling for SLT on call, and you're this and you're that and you're the other. Somebody who is seriously reflective in leadership would, before they even go and have that conversation, would look at the circumstances. So, okay, let's have a look at Sharon's timetable. Oh, she's got all, and I'm going to use some phrases that people might not like, but bottom sets. Sharon's got loads of classes with really high needs kids in there, and we've not been able to put the right TA support in. Sharon's kids, actually, when they came in year 7, had a reading age of 6 or 7. So how on earth are they going to get those GCSE results? That's what a reflective leader would do. That's what a supportive leader would do. Not looking for excuses, but looking for the circumstances that sit around it to go, is this sorry for talking about you like this, but is this a Sharon problem?
Oh, but even more,
or is
so,
this a circumstantial problem?
Oh, and what's more, Sharon lost her mum last year. And Sharon's marriage has broken down and her son's struggling at school. Now, that would be really beautiful if they could start to take into consideration if my personal circumstances had shifted. So you're right. Absolutely, that's what should happen.
And the other thing, of course, is that what Sharon's children do or how well they get on in Sharon's class is not entirely down to what Sharon does. Yeah, we're not in a factory here, children are not widgets. So, there's loads of things that have happened to those children. Some of them have had a struggle getting up in the morning, some of them have had no breakfast, and then everything that happens in their exams or in their SATs if they're in primary, all seems to be blamed on the teacher. And it can, it's regarded that it's only the teacher that can possibly have any effect on that.
Absolutely spot on. And I think to the non-educator listener, I think that discussion was perfect as a framing. So, okay. Prior to groups like Life After Teaching, that kind of stuff was happening. Nobody knew because they were exited, ghosted, and there was no leaving card to sign, correct? Now, here's where we come to the new chapter. Little bit of joined up thinking. There is a Facebook group where this kind of information is becoming, thank God, Facebook put an anonymous posting feature on it. Because if you can post anonymously in the Life After Teaching Facebook group, this narrative is now writ large time and time again. And yourself, Nick, and Sarah have been joining up dots now going, oh, this isn't a one-off in Dorset, or this doesn't just happen in Liverpool. This isn't just this Matt's problem. Nick, you and Sarah have been spearheading. I'd like you to talk to us about what you've done so far to start to make the statement, silenced by support isn't just a one school issue.
Absolutely right. Yes. So you're absolutely right in that people for so many years felt completely separated, completely alone in all of this. People would be told, yeah, you're struggling. Everybody else seems to be getting on okay. And of course, what we haven't mentioned yet, of course, is NDAs. All the people that tend to leave after getting a support plan. There's a couple of ways people leave. Lots just resign, and lots leave with a settlement. And those that leave with a settlement have to sign an NDA. So straight away, all those people are separated. Straight away, they feel like they're the only one. They cannot talk about it outside of the walls of their own house. So a group like Life After Teaching that brings all those people together, and as he said, allows people to talk about it anonymously, makes a massive difference. And in fact, Facebook have changed it recently so that you can have an anonymous name, can't it? So you can now begin to realize who you're talking to and get those conversations going as well. So yeah, but to answer your question, Sharon, what happened after I contacted you and Sarah and I started talking was that we got together, didn't we, Sarah? Basically talked about what we could do about this. I talked to my MP, Dan, to get him to write to Bridget Phillipson, which is now done. And we started thinking about what else we could do. One thing that we did was get in touch with Schools Week. For anyone who's not an educator, they're an important online education publication. And they did an investigation about it and did a report on our campaign. And what happened simultaneously with that was that I'd said to Sarah, we need to get some evidence, or one of us said it, I'm not sure which. And this was the power of the group. 175,000 people. So a message went out, who's been affected this way and who would like to share their story. And about 330 people, I think it was at that point, came back and actually shared their story, which is actually a really brave thing to do when you've been through everything that you've been through. We've talked about how people crumble. And I was just thinking when you were saying that, Sharon, another reason why people crumble is because when you're a teacher, often it's really an integral part of your identity. And you're probably absolutely exhausted by running around just trying to do everything you possibly can. You can never get everything done when you're a teacher. So you're already exhausted. You get this plan sort of dumped on you from nowhere. You can't see how you can do any better because you're already, at your wit's end. And that's kind of why people crumble. To
interject, sorry, Nick, I've got another theory about that. I think one of the reasons so many people crumble is the generation who's been targeted. There is an age bracket, I suspect, that is emerging here. And our age bracket, call us Gen Xers if you want. Gen Xers do as they're told in the workplace. Gen Xers are not millennials. Gen Xers are not Gen Zs who go, I'm out of here. You're not talking to me like this. I know my boundaries. I know my rights. We are the pit ponies who've come through the education system, probably since university. I know you slightly buck the trend, but we have been taught and worn down over years to doff our cap to whoever is sat behind the desk that says head teacher's office. We think a union is something that we only use in a point of crisis. And actually, our generation on the whole haven't even got a copy of their bloody contract that they signed, let alone know what they're entitled to, what their rights are. Employment law, where do I even go with that? We are disempowered. We are, by our nature, deferential and do as we are told. And we sit so quickly in a pool of self-inflicted shame that we've done something wrong because we are people pleasers by very definition, which is why we're in the profession. We are ripe for the picking when it comes to this kind of toxic, controlling, bullying, and hopefully soon to be illegal practice within school. The generation they're targeting, it is like shooting fish in a barrel, if you want my opinion.
Yeah, and it's like that's absolutely right about our generation, and also that's absolutely right about the culture within teaching. So we think of ourselves as nice, helpful people, who sort of give of ourselves to help the next generation. So we don't think of ourselves as militant or anything like that in any way. Before I was a teacher, I did a few things. But one thing I did for 13 years was I worked in a shoe factory, and you can imagine that was a heavily unionized environment. And if anything like the things that happened in teaching happened in that shoe factory, the shop steward would have marched into the office of the manager and said, "What the hell do you think you're doing to my member?" But our unions, I don't want to be too critical here, are very focused
I will
on
be.
national campaigns. And I absolutely support their stances on Palestine and pay and all those sorts of things. But it's so important that they actually focus on the individuals who are members of their union that need support.
Okay, so where we are now, you contacted me to get to Sarah. You then realised that you'd got a hive mind working within Life After Teaching.
Yeah.
You realised you'd got some support with the ear of Dan and Sarah, two like-minded people. Then you started to reach out and garner stories and testimonials from people who had similar experiences to each other. Then Schools Week came into play, and then you produced the most powerful publication between the two of you that Sarah is showing now, Silenced by Support. For those of you who are listening to this from audio, it's the most powerful read. And tell us a little bit about what you produced at this point. So you've done Schools Week, you've got Dan Aldridge, you pull this together beautifully. Tell us what you did there.
We basically, so as I was saying before our little detour, Sarah put out a thing to the group saying, who's been affected by this. We had these 300 people or so got in touch. And from there, and some people shared their story, but said they didn't want it shared any further, which is just so understandable in the circumstances. But we pulled out 101 stories from that, which was so powerful. And what I always say to people is, if we send this off to someone, there's like a preface, a piece that the two of you have written, Finding My Tree, and there's an introduction. So I always say to people, read all of those three sort of introductory passages. And then there's no way people are going to, even though it's not, very wordy, no one's going to sit down and read the whole thing. But if they just pick out three at random, just flick through at random and pick out, come to teacher number 51 here, and just read the pull quote at the bottom and do that 3 times, you've got a picture of what's going on. So if I look at number 51 here, it says, female teachers, particularly those approaching or over 50, called into question with performance management or appraisal, and then forced out under threat or capability procedures. That's what happened to me. Flick through another one randomly, number 37.
I was going to say, I'll give you number 90.
Go on.
I battled hard to try to meet the new targets, but each time new issues were blindsiding me. And that goes about into that support plan thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and all my observations and appraisals. Yeah, I mean, people can write in and pick a number. 67. All my observations and appraisals for my original subject were outstanding until November, when SLT started to find faults with things that were judged outstanding only a month before.
Perfect. Sarah, can we have number 26, please? Let's see what number 26 yields.
Well, this is like bingo. Bear with, caller. The response was that my time management is obviously an issue. Quote, you need to be on a support plan.
Okay. So we have a really powerful piece of literature to read that at that point you have something concrete. Where's that gone? Has that stayed sat on your desk, Nick? Sarah, what's happened to that publication? Is it a website? Has it been sent anywhere? What have we done with it?
It took us quite a while to get them printed. So first of all, what we did was the Schools Week piece came out. That was coming out on the Monday. And on the Friday or Saturday, I thought, all these people are going to be looking at Schools Week and seeing this, and they're going to be thinking, that happened to me. What are those people going to do? They need somewhere to go. They need something to pull them all together. So I thought I better put together a website really quickly. Well, luckily, I in my spare time when I was a teacher, I ran a magazine, because someone's got to run a magazine about David Bowie, and it falls to me. Someone's got to do it. So I knew how to set up a website. I knew how to design a report like the one we've just done. So it almost feels like all those things I've done in my life up to now have just been there to give me the skills to be able to do the things we need to do for this campaign. So anyway, so I set up the website, and I thought, well, when people get there, they're going to need something to do. You know, they're going to need some way to sort of pull them together or share their stories. So I just went onto Google Forms and came up with a bunch of questions so that people could share their stories about the things that had happened to them. And I think it's fair to say, Sarah, isn't it, that we were quite overwhelmed and swamped by the responses.
What was the response, Sarah? What happened?
So in the end, I think just to clarify, because it's been a messy timeline. It's happened very quickly. You'll have to bring me back to this point, Sharon, but I want to go back to last September, October, because last September, October, a journalist from Sky got in touch with us, and there was some work done over the period of about 5-6 weeks, wasn't there, where she spoke to about 250 people from our group directly, gathered some of these stories, but it was more focused on, it was more wide ranging. It was about toxic bullying and the use of NDAs. And I think we were quite hopeful at that point that something would come of that. And to be fair, they did push it hard on the cycle for that 24 hours. And there was a podcast and there was this, that, and the other. And also at that point in time, I was still waiting for a response from Bridget Phillipson, and I'd kind of hoped that it would tie in with that, but ultimately it didn't. It came a little bit later. So we'd had a bit of media engagement, and then it kind of is the phrase. It was a damp squib. It kind of, and then nothing, and then I had this horrible period of time where we'd received a response from DFE. I'd received a response from DFE to what was a really robust, nothing to do with my ego here, but a really robust, well-articulated summary of the collective concerns of a lot of people who'd contributed from the group. And trying to distill all of that down was very difficult. It started out at about 50 pages. It ended up at 10. It was a bit of a struggle, but we got there. I got a response, and it wasn't from Bridget Phillipson. It was from somebody in the communications office of DFE. And I think I've said this on a previous podcast. The second paragraph of it was nothing short of mansplaining to me the importance of teaching as a profession. Well, really? Mike's going to have to bleep this, but no Sherlock. So, and then it went on. It was a very standard political response. We're doing this. Here's a link to this. And to be fair, some of it was very relevant. There's been changes to the appraisal and capability procedures. It's actually tied down a bit more now, but I don't think some senior leaders have read it. But it was such a disappointing response because it was a non-response. It didn't acknowledge the reality of what was written in that letter, that I couldn't bring myself to go back to the group and go, I've had a response and here it is, because I think it would have caused utter outrage and I couldn't deal with that at the time. So I felt ashamed that I'd not had the right response from the people who should have responded to that in the right way. And in all honesty, that was then parallel to the experiences of what a lot of people who've gone through support plans and the exits and settlement agreements, that's the feeling. I've not been listened to. They're not taking it seriously. They do. So anyway, so nothing had happened. I'd kind of put it to one side for a bit when Nick came to me. And that initial go out to the group was a call for testimony. And that initial, as Nick said, we probably got about mid 300s responses to that. And it was harrowing reading. It was really harrowing reading. Nick and I were in touch. We were going through and almost cleansing it to make sure that there was absolutely nothing identifiable. And then Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't difficult to go, we'll pick 101 random, because there was no testimony that wasn't powerful, if that makes sense. So, and I have to say, Nick has done the legwork on this. Nick is the person who sat in the background and has gone through those testimonies. The book is beautiful. The website is beautiful. Nick just goes off and does it because I'm a scattered squirrel on speed at times. I can't focus. So Nick's done this. But what then happened with Nick's absolutely right. We knew the Schools Week article was coming out, and there was this kind of blind panic about, oh my God, now's the time to capture this, and we haven't got anywhere to funnel into. So Nick did the website, did the questionnaire, and where Nick started this was, with the benefit of hindsight, we could have structured the questionnaire slightly differently, because we've had a monumental response to that, which, when we've cleaned the data again, has probably left us with about 3,500 really robust responses. But then we've had to really dig into the data rather than being able to directly pull out some of the deeper trends. We've been able to pull out some obvious ones to do with age, to do with gender, but we could have framed the questions slightly differently.
If I may, I don't think what went out to gather that information was anything other than a temperature test. Are we on the right lines here? Is there a ton of people who... So let's just park that for a minute. Irrespective of what questions were asked, what quality of data, because data's data. We're talking about people here. Let me just ask you this:
the data is solid and robust, and we could have made it easier for ourselves by asking questions differently.
Let me just go back again. 3,000 what? People.
Yeah, 3,300. Yeah,
3,300 people, right, who have responded to something that went out through a Facebook group that not everybody is a member of, that not everybody has social media, that not everybody is prepared. So if you've had 3,000 people do it already, I'm no mathematician, but I'm already multiplying stuff out about the scale of what we're talking about here.
So yeah, you're absolutely right, and it is a temperature test, and I think where I come from with this is it was a temperature test for multiple reasons. A, we wanted to build on what we had in terms of that testimony and what our gut was telling us about what we were seeing in the group. But also, we knew that actually, like it or not, when you go to somebody and say, there's a problem, there is a systemic issue, there is this, they don't want the soft data, they don't want the anecdote, they don't want people's experience, they want numbers. So, yeah, and I said this to a couple of people in the group, because a couple of people were quite critical about it, which I took very personally, but hey ho. But fundamentally, it was for that. It was to be able to go to somebody and go, 3,500 people have responded to this. Of that 3,500 people, this many were put on support plans. This many ultimately ended up going through capability. This many ended up leaving their jobs, leaving the profession. So when you statistically amplify that to the equivalent of the profession and everybody that's come out, what we have seen is the tiniest tip of the iceberg. The tiniest tip of the iceberg. And that volume of responses and the quality of the data that is in those responses is enough for it to be statistically significant. And that is important when we are going and having conversations with other people. So I think that's where I was going with it.
That is so powerful, because you have had conversations then subsequently with other people. So who else have you spoken to?
I mean, what we keep saying on the group is we've got irons in the fire. It is a really exciting time.
You don't have to name names, but what I want to get out on this podcast is that you don't have to drop who you've spoken to. Talk about this exciting time. Talk about these irons in the fire. This is not going away, is it?
No, it isn't. And there's media interest. Let's put it like that. There's media interest. There have been multiple meetings with one particular media outlet who are very clear that there is a story. They're very clear that there is a public interest story.
And that's the data that's done that, isn't it, Sarah? That they're able to go along to them and say, look, 3,000 people through the group, through the survey, have said this, and out of those 3,000 people, 2,000 have directly had a support plan, and maybe 1,000 have seen that to somebody else, and because we've crunched the data, we can demonstrate now that there's a problem, and so we're being taken seriously.
But I think what's been beautiful about these conversations has been that the person who is one particular person who's talking to us is so utterly determined, as a non-specialist, non-education background, has really dug into it, has really dug in to understand the experience, to understand so even go back to the start of this podcast, the reality of there needs to be HR processes. We've had those conversations. So it's very clear that we're not coming as representatives of a profession who basically don't want to be scrutinized. We've been very clear in terms of avoiding bias and that sort of stuff. But the joy for me in the sadness of the whole thing is that somebody who sits outside of education is really listening. The unknown at this point is what that's going to result in and how that might play out, because we don't know at this point. There's a whole mechanism in media and in journalism that is not quite as straightforward as somebody going, this is a great story, I want to run with it. It's not the movies. It's not a man with a hat with press in it, and it's not that. So we're sat in a space at the moment where Nick and I feel very hopeful that there are people sat outside of our world who are seeing this, that it's potentially, I'll say, a Me Too scenario. There is a dam going to break at some point. And I think as well, people sat outside of education in the media, but also we've now got some very significant voices in terms of MPs. Dan Aldridge has been amazing. I know that Nick will talk about that. Dan Aldridge has been amazing. I know there's another group member who has been given access to their MP's parliamentary aid, who has structured a question to be posed to, and there's a whole flipping process with that. So I know there are people listening, and we're now trying to be just 2 steps ahead all of the time, anticipating what questions they're going to come back with. What might they want? What do we need to be able to present to them almost on the turn of a sixpence to kind of respond and not let the momentum go as it's starting to build.
And I can think of no two better people to do that in terms of the way in which I've seen you operate together as a unit. And we've talked about that one media outlet, but simultaneously, Nick, I know that you have had a list of people that you have sent copies of Silenced by Support to. Do a bit of name dropping. Who have you gone out to and why?
Yeah, well, this has gone out to lots of outlets. So it's gone out to The Guardian, the BBC, obviously their education correspondents, Private Eye, some smaller sort of media outlets as well, Channel 4, because we want to get, we're talking to the people that do things like Final Four and Dispatches and all those sort of investigatory sort of things. We don't know which ones of these will come out, but it's a numbers game. The more you send out, the more you get. I've also sent it to people who are like academics. There's UCL do quite a lot of work on teacher retention, and so they're interested in this sort of thing as well. And of course, I've sent it out to the unions as well. And so those went out, I'm going to say, a week ago, maybe just over a week. So yeah, we're just sort of starting to get some responses from that as well. So with the media outlet that we've been talking to, that Sarah was talking about, plus all these other things going on as well, if 20% of the people that get the report think, gosh, there's something here, we've got 35 reports, we'll have quite a lot going on. And alongside that, we can now follow up, because since we've got the report, we've now got the data from the survey as well. So now we can follow up with these people and say, look, you've had the anecdotes, you've had this sort of human side of it. You can see how it's affecting people. Now with the data, you can see how many people it's affecting. You can see the scale of it. And this just shows that this really is the tip of the iceberg, but still it's thousands of people. So
we keep talking about
really compelling.
Tip of the iceberg, and Sarah said the dam's about to burst. Thousands of people, and one of the things that I want to move us on to there, because what you've outlined there, the pair of you, is a campaign, and I think that's what's really important to harness at this point. What we are talking about now, and what is making this podcast different, is it isn't anecdotal about what's happened to such and such a body. We are talking now about a campaign. And in my experience of life after teaching, people will bubble over sporadically but frequently. Panorama need to know about this. We should be writing to our MP. We need a petition. We need a Just Giving. But do you know what, teachers? It's happening. And like any good union and any good campaign, it is only as good as the member and the body that gets behind what's happening. You've had outlined for you a campaign. Sarah.
And I think that's fairly critical, actually, because when we initially put the second questionnaire out, the questionnaire that was really data based, initially the response rate to that was so disappointing. It was unbelievable. And I react and respond to things in a I take everything personally. It's just who I am. So when you have had 5 years almost of people going, this is a scandal. It's like the post office scandal. Let's get Panorama involved. Let's write to our MPs. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And then when you do this, and the engagement on it was, I don't want to use the word appalling, but it was disappointingly low. In a group of 175,000, I think in the first week, we only had about 150 people respond to it, which I thought was appalling. But then some group members started becoming very vocal about that, about the campaign. And they started posting about it. They started tagging people. And part of it's to do with Facebook. Facebook doesn't show everything to everybody, even if they're in a group, blah, blah, blah. But when some group members really got behind it and kind of articulated that, oh, come on, people, you've been asking for this for ages. Now's the time. That's when we saw that spike. But I think it's symptomatic of a number of things. Yes, there is a campaign. Campaigns are only as good as the people that are behind it, not in front of it. It's behind it that's important. It's the people who are prepared to speak up and push with those people at the front. Nick and I fundamentally are not important in terms of, yes, we are. We're doing bits on it. We're legwork monkeys. That's what we are. But we need people behind it, because ultimately, at a really simple level, there's safety in numbers. And I think that's part of the fear factor. People don't want to speak up because they don't want to be isolated and all the rest of it. So there is safety in numbers. But with any campaign, there is always a tipping point. There's a point where the critical mass of people becomes so much that they have to be heard. And this has always been my little pushback within the group. There's no point in coordinating a campaign of writing a standardised letter to all of the MPs, because all that results in is a standardised response coming back. There is no point doing a petition, because then they don't achieve anything. They're wasted energy. This is not wasted energy, because it's people's real lived experience. And you are absolutely right with what you said, Sharon. Let's take it away from numbers and take it back to people. People are being damaged. They are being broken. They are being pushed to the point of wanting to find the mechanism that hurts them significantly enough that they can legitimately have time off work. It is making people suicidal. People have taken their own lives. That is the stark reality of it. So this now is about people. It's about the story. And just off on a tangent, although it is not like the post office scandal with one central problematic thing like a software system, the post office scandal came to light because people were relentless in talking about it. Private Eye in particular, Private Eye really picked up on this. And when it came to it, hundreds of people came together in Fenny Compton, and people had that realization of, oh, it's not just me.
Can I just take that it's not just me? And I think that's where this works really nicely into where I'd like to lead you both, which is a huge part of the silenced by support, which is the settlement agreements that sit at the back of this, which is what we are campaigning to bring to light, but in and of themselves are part of the problem of asking for support for the campaign, because these people have been frightened to death by things that they've signed at the lowest point in their life. So if you can imagine, we're asking for people to get behind us, to come from out of the shadows when they're frightened to death because of what they've had to sign to exit. So if we could at this point, because it's going to, I think, bring us nicely into the next couple of things I want to lead into. Number one, let's talk around what is the worst case scenario at the end of this support plan, which is the exit and the settlement agreement. What does that look like? The next thing I'd like to then take us into is, and what's the union's role within the exits of the support plans, please? And then finally, to bring it to a conclusion, what do you want to happen? So if you could just hold those in your head, and I will be keeping you in a very narrow lane, Smart and Dunwood, so these tangents are not meandering off. Let's start. I don't know which one of you wants to pick up this ball I'm about to bat over the net. Mr. Smart, talk me through this very emotive term, NDA, gagging order, settlement agreement. Let's start again for our non-educational listeners. What do we mean by NDAs, settlement agreements, and exit?
So it's clear that there's like a very clear and well-worn path now that if you get a support plan, you're on a path. Basically, you're literally on a path to leave your job. Our data shows from those 3,300 responses we've got that 70% of people who are given a support plan leave their job. It's actually probably a bit more than that because there are also another 6% who are still going through the process. And there's another 2% who've had to take a demotion as a result. Okay, so there's 22% that retained their position. So if you get a support plan, 75% of the time you lose your job. So that's how much of a supportive procedure it is. So there's a well-worn path, as I said. And what happens is you get given a support plan. You think, oh, okay, it's time for a beep again. Oh, my number's up. This is it. And, people are expecting it sometimes because they get to a certain age, they get expensive, and maybe they do get a bit slower and set in their ways and stuff because we do as we get older. And the system doesn't allow for that in any way. You get a support plan and basically, if you're wise, you bail. Get out as soon as you got a support plan. Because if you don't, you'll almost certainly fail your support plan. And you'll fail your informal support plan, and it'll have all sorts of stupid targets on it that there's no way that they can be measured, and they can just say, oh, no, we don't think you've done this, in our opinion. Then you get a formal support plan, then you fail that, then you get capability. Well, once you've got capability on your record, schools have to disclose that for the next 2 years. So you're not getting another job because that will be disclosed and you won't get a job offer. And this is why people get out as soon as they have a support plan. They just know the writing's on the wall. Then what happens is the union steps in. They negotiate an exit plan for you, which is normally a very small amount of money, probably equal to the amount of money that you would have got if you just worked out your notice, and an agreed reference. Probably quite a meagre one that just has facts rather than probably the reference you deserve. And you get out and you get to, if you're not too broken, go and get another job in teaching somewhere else or do something else entirely with your life. And, these things just come completely out of the blue and they're just like, okay, this is the end of my career. So it's happened at last.
But I think what's critical with the settlement agreements and it is part of my nature in terms of wanting the precision with the language. We use the term NDA a lot. And actually, when people exit, they don't exit with a non-disclosure agreement. They exit with a settlement agreement that will have something called a non-disparagement clause within it. Now, the non-disparagement clause does work both ways. And I am aware of very specific circumstances where actually a teacher who has exited has then subsequently found out that within the school environment they've exited from, some really quite unprofessional and inaccurate things have been said, and they've been able to leverage that non-disparagement clause to go after the school after the fact. So it does work both ways in that regard. But fundamentally, what it stops you from doing is talking about it. Settlement agreements with non-disparagement clauses are the fight club of the education system. You don't talk about settlement agreements. You aren't even allowed, and this is the great frustrating, you alluded to this, Sharon. People are quite often at such a low point mentally and physically at the point where a settlement agreement is put in front of them, regardless, we'll come on to unions in a minute, regardless of how good the union support has or hasn't been, regardless of how well it's been explained or not, at the point where you are signing it, I cannot believe that people should be allowed to sign a legally binding contract that binds them forever. It's not time sensitive. It's not for the next 5 years or the next 10 years. It is forever. How on earth can you sign something like that when you are not mentally well, when you are not physically well?
And how can you sign it? Here's the interesting one, and we will come on to unions in a minute. In the same process as a head teacher who's trained in mental health, who understands the significance of anxiety, work-related stress, a union official, a union rep, they are broken, they are sobbing, they are on antidepressants, they are under the doctor, because I'd be interested to know what percentage have gone off with work-related stress as a result of it and are working out their exit whilst off, and I am using air quotes, sick. So they're not even medically signed on at work to sign this agreement. Okay. And interestingly, my understanding is part of that agreement will state, as a result of you signing this, you now give up your right to go for constructive dismissal in the future once you get your act back together and you realise you've been shafted royally by not only your school, a weak and ineffective union rep who should have said, hang on a minute, this person's not fit to do it. Oh, and by the time you come out the other side, you're gagged, you're bound, you're isolated, and you can do bugger all about it because you've signed something when you have been so unwell. And that, my friends, is the bloody scandal.
You sign away all of your rights, don't you? The only thing that you don't sign away your right to is if they've messed up your pension as a result of their actions, you've got legal recourse outside of the settlement agreement for that. But fundamentally, you relinquish all of your employment rights that you would have had. And this is the way up that people have. Sorry, Nick, to cut across you, and this will lead into the unions. People will say, well, get legal advice. Why don't you go to a tribunal? Well, aside from the fact that the tribunal process is lengthy, you can be talking 18 months, 2 years, 3 years.
Costly as well.
It's extremely costly. It's extremely costly, not only financially, but in terms of that whole thing is with you the whole time. So the emotional and the mental cost is huge. And fundamentally, the success rate statistics to do with employment tribunals are appallingly low in favour of employees bringing a claim to a tribunal. It's something like less than 10% of, not just in teaching, but employment tribunals generally. I might be misquoting the stat, but it's very low in terms of the success rate of an employee winning at a tribunal against an employer. The odds are categorically stacked against the employee in most cases. So when faced with all of that, even when you are in the depths of a severe mental health crisis, there is enough rationality to go, well, I'm really bad right now. Do I want to be really bad for the next 3 years while this is playing out and then come out at the other side having achieved nothing? I might as well just wipe my hands of it and walk away and live with the injustice for the rest of my career.
Do you know what the sentence is? I just wanted it to stop. That's it. Nick, we talk very passionately then about that point of signing, stripped of your rights. What are your thoughts on that? Because you immersed yourself in the stories and the testimonials.
Immersing myself in the stories and testimony. I mean, in my little office upstairs, I got my desk. My wife's desk is behind me, and then sometimes I'm just coming across a testimonial and read it to her, and we're just so angry and literally just hurt on the behalf of the person that's writing the stuff. And you're kind of thinking, how long ago did this happen? I hope this person's okay now. In one or two cases, I had to get back onto Sarah and say, I don't think this person that's written this testimonial is okay. Have you got details so you can get in touch with that person to make sure that they will be all right? So it's been a very emotional thing going through all of this.
I can imagine
the
it.
positive part of it is that what's going on now is, as you were saying, everyone's been separated in the past by these non-disparagement clauses. Everyone's been afraid to talk about it. The whole massive thing has been just a whole bunch of individuals all thinking they're the only one. And this is our moment. This is what's happening now. People are coming together and realizing through the group, through the campaign, that it's happened to thousands and thousands of us. And as we get together now, this is where the power is. We've got the data, we've got the testimonials. We can convince people that something is really going on because we've got that combo of heartbreaking stories and the huge numbers. And now we're all together.
Where this takes us now is what burst open the Hollywood Me Too. The minute you are not frightened that they're going to sue you or come after you or take your home, because there's so many, they can't possibly do that to you. And the minute they suddenly go, hang on a minute, these guys were acting illegally. So do you know what? Your gagging order counts for nothing. And I've said this to Sarah on many occasions when we have sat in the twilight hours on our 25th hour of the day on the phone. I have got a vision of hundreds and thousands of teachers ripping up their settlement agreements and going, come on, bring it on. Let's see what you've got, because you've not got me on my own anymore, because there's 25,000 stood with me. Go on, take me to court. I dare you. And that's the point I want us to get to. Because when we come on to what do we want to happen with this campaign? Where do we want this to go? Well, I'm going to start by throwing my hat in the ring that those pieces of paper stand for bloody bugger all. Go on, take me. That's the first thing I would like to come out. Not for the going forward, not for the changes that this will bring, but to get justice for those poor people who've gone through it. So that's my first, what would I like to happen? Sarah, what would you like?
I think fundamentally that's it for me. Is I go back to where I started. There is employment legislation for a reason, because you cannot believe in an entire population that everybody's perfect all of the time. It's there for a reason. And there are going to be cases where that person is not right for that role, or they have done something wrong, and so capability or disciplinary is completely appropriate. But the point being, there are processes in law. And what is happening here, a lot of the time with what we're reading, is unlawful behavior. It's not illegal, it's unlawful. And what I want is two things. Number one, I want anybody who's been subjected to one of these things, exactly like you said, to be able to, in reality or digitally, shred it and say, screw you guys. It means nothing. Come at me. Go on. But more than anything, and this is really personal for me, I know people in my life who are entering the profession, are early career teachers at this point. And I do not want a situation where somewhere down the line, somebody close to me that I love the bones of, who love their job, then suddenly finds themselves in this position later on because people are still behaving unlawfully. Part of this is to do with the absolute absence of skill set by senior leaders. Senior leaders do not understand the legislation that sits around the processes that they implement in schools. Not all schools have got HR departments. Not all HR departments are effective. And let's make no bones about it, a HR department is there for the employer. It's not there for the employees, no matter how you dress it up. So I want, and it's kind of happened, but not in relation to this specific thing. There has recently been a proposed change. I don't think it's quite gone through into law yet, to do with the misuse of non-disclosure elements in relation to cases of sexual harassment and harassment in the workplace. So that's either progressing through Parliament or it's all but there. But that's not a general, because a lot of people in the group went, yay, NDAs have gone. No, they haven't. It's in very specific instances. And it's almost to stop the thing that was happening in the church in the 70s and 80s of moving a priest on when there was something about it. That's how they were being used. I want a change in legislation. I want external scrutiny. I want a situation that if somebody is deemed to need to be having that support, that at that point it is not the school that does it, that it's an independent third party who is able to scrutinise what the school have already done to support that person, to scrutinise the school's processes, to make sure that the school have followed not only policy, but legislation, because there are far too many school leaders in this country who believe, not everybody, but there are far too many in my experience, that believe policy trumps law. So that's what I want.
Thank you, Sarah. Nick?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, endorsed all of that. In terms of the campaign, I think some of the next steps will be really exciting. As well as how, out of the 3,300 people who answered the survey, about 2,000 gave us their email address and said they want to keep in touch. It's going to be a bit of a massive job to put all those into the right database to be able to send out emails to them. But, I've got the time. So once that's done pretty soon, we'll email out to everyone that's got in touch and ask them what they want to happen next. I've got some thoughts about that. I wonder if we might have online meetings of people. I wonder if we might have regional face-to-face meetings with people. I just think that would be really powerful, because I really, I've said it a couple of times, but we've been separated for a long time. So bringing people together feels like it's really, really important. And Sharon, if people come along to those meetings online or face-to-face and bring along their agreements and their settlement agreements and tear them all up, I think that would be absolutely brilliantly powerful.
100%. And
so I think that's got to go with a campaign.
Perfect. And you know what? We keep talking about this data set. Here's a message for you. You shouldn't be collecting that data. The bloody unions should be collecting that data, because I'll tell you something for nothing. They're the ones who are putting the pens in the hands of the people who are signing it. So they know how many of their members have signed NDAs. They know settlement agreements. So let's just rip a bit of a sticking plaster off that one for a minute, because the information is out there. It's just not been collected, because every single person I've ever dealt with who's been sobbing to me on the phone at 10 o'clock at night, who are signing the settlement agreement, have had a union rep. So one of my asks is, let's see your figures, unions, because you know what's happening.
Yeah, and I really want to separate something out here, because I've alluded to it previously. I want to separate out the decision-making processes that caseworkers might make with an individual person in terms of it going to settlement agreement, because actually that is the only realistic option, because tribunal, it's not going to go there. There's a whole thing to do with legal cases that an insurance underwriter or a lawyer will often not take on a case unless there's a really secure chance of it being a win in their favour. So I do understand to a point why quite often settlement agreement is the option that is presented as the most favourable of all of the options that are presented. That's one issue. But where I completely am in alignment with you is there has been, what's the word I'm looking for? There's culpability from the unions, because you are absolutely right. This is not a new problem. Our data tells us that this started escalating in 2014. Make of that what you will, Michael Gove. Well, it was 2010, 2014. But fundamentally, the unions, even if they don't have a complete picture, have a picture. They have a picture. And this is not being spoken about, but it is being spoken about to us. We were approached last year by 2 or 3 regional union people who were saying, we are talking about this at regional level. It's a disgrace. We want to talk about it, but it's not being talked about up here. The union should be publishing figures annually. The union should be publishing figures annually and then going to DFE and going, is this okay? Is this okay with you? That this
do you know what they should be? Do you know what they should be going to DFE with? Do you know how much this has cost you? Do you know how much it has cost this profession to get that teacher who's been off on work-related stress because of this covered by supply, to have the time for the senior management team off timetable dealing with it? Do you know how much this has cost your budget? And then the settlement agreement and the pay that we've had to do as a lump sum, tax-free, whichever way you want to look at it. Can we talk about how much this is costing and then tell me we've not got adequate SEM provision? And I'll give you this one, and this is my last one. All right? The one thing they weaponize more than anything, in my opinion, is a reference. Okay? That's the one thing that the teacher panics about more than anything. So here's the thing. If I want to look at somebody's online DBS, they give me a password potentially, and I can go on and I can check it. That's what a reference should be. It should not be written by a head teacher. It should be an ongoing document that is added to every year, that is a standard template for every single teacher, TA, and anybody working within a school. Dates, job description. That's it. And yes, safeguarding concerns, 100%. But it is a standardized reference that's accessible by any employer simply with a one-off password because it's on a portal. We're in 2025, for Christ's sake. Me and the Connexus team could have that up and running within 10 days. Thank you very kindly. All right. So in all fairness, take the power of the reference away from the school. Unions, let's see the colour of the money in the figures that you've got. And campaign-wise, let's get behind Nick and behind Sarah and what they are doing. It has been the first of, I suspect, many podcasts with you, Nick. Many. Because I am going to hold this space to promote and publicise the meetups, the networking meetings, to publicise and promote the stuff you are doing, care of you, the support that you're getting. And on behalf of every single member of Life After Teaching, and on behalf of the people who have gone through this and their families, I want to thank you both for what you are doing of your free time and your own expense, I hasten to add, because I think without people like you, this would go on for a lot longer than it's going to. So thank you both, and thank you both for your time today.
Thank you both. Yeah, it's an exciting time. I can't stress it enough. We're coming together now. People are not separated anymore. We're all getting together, and just really watch this space. And we'll be emailing out to people and get in touch with people in other ways. And it's getting to that point where it's rolling, and you won't be able to stop it rolling. It's just reaching critical mass.
Perfect. Cheers, Nick. Thanks. Enough's enough now. We're on it. Thanks for staying with us during another great episode of the Pit Pony podcast. And on behalf of myself, Sarah Dunwood, Mike Roberts at Making Digital Real, we wish you all the very best, and we'll see you soon. If you wish to contact me directly for a support session or a clarity call for your next steps, please find my link in the comments below. See you soon.